All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, welcome to Moneyline with Nancy. It's week starts. I hope you're at your place of work and your TV sets are on, definitely, or you're watching on your mobile phone. At the beginning of the program, I did talk about what I'll be looking at today, which is these bad debtors and over 5 trillion naira hanging on AMCON's neck. Bad loans, that's from the banks, non-performing loans from the banks. In fact, AMCON spent over close to 1 trillion naira rescuing Skybank. And we know what happened, at least during the Sanusi's days. The matters are still even in court as I speak. A lot of them are not resolved. And these monies that I'm talking about is not just ghost money. These monies have been taken, that's over 5 trillion naira, have been taken by politicians, ministers, heads of organizations. In fact, when there is Owambe, you see all these big men and big women, they are spraying money, but they've not paid the loans that they owe. And what is the implication of all this to the Nigerian economy? So that's what I'm looking at right now. Tope Fasua is joining me now. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Global Analytics and Economic and Policy Analyst. Welcome to the show again, Tope. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Morning.
Good morning. I did give a background at the beginning of the program about AMCON. I did tell our viewers that AMCON was created in 2010, I think precisely in July. We do know the tsunami that happened in 2009. I remember vividly the former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, who is now the Emir of Kano, Emir Mohammed II, I think, going up, down, up and down to tell the National Assembly to create what we know as AMCON today. And I remember then, during our analysis, 2010, the shows I had then in 2010, you know, talking about it as a bad bank, you know, to take the toxic assets from the banks. Just give me a brief background of, you know, AMCON and these bad loans.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, the whole idea was, you know, to create a bad bank, then which will have a lifespan of its own. I think it was 10 years or so, within which to resolve the loans, quote and unquote, you know, get the monies back, go after the assets of those who are owing, you know, get the collaterals realized, you know, like we say in banking and so on. And then close shop in 10 years and everybody goes home happy. But from beginning, I quite didn't appreciate or even support the idea of a bad bank because going from the experience of what they call the Great Recession of that period, what we saw was an attempt by those who have the power to privatize the profits and socialize the losses. So one way or the other, if central bank was putting up the money, initial funding, you know, to be able to bail out those banks and, you know, to actually relieve them of those loans, it needs to be said that central bank money is still everybody's money. Because central bank is owned by the entire peoples of Nigeria, as well. It's not a privately owned central bank like in some other jurisdictions. You know, but the point now is that 8-9 years on, where are we with this? You know, it doesn't seem like we have actually had a very significant recovery. And of course, I've always followed everything that Malam Kuru,
that's Ahmed Kuru.
Ahmed Kuru, what he says, you know, and many times, you know, even from his position as an MD of a government-owned bank, you know, he's constrained. But sometimes when you read between the lines, you see that how much distress he's under, you know, because they are unable to recover the money. And there are many shenanigans played by people who own. The first thing is to say that, number one, in this same country, it's so difficult for legitimate business people at the SME level to get loans for their businesses.
And the big men get the money and they don't pay
exactly.
back.
Then, so what's this thing with the banks and the moral hazard of giving you know, so much money to so few people and then losing the money? So we have about 300 people owing all the 5 trillion or thereabouts, you know. And these are the people, they're the ones that get awards. When government is incorporating any commission to look into what, they are the ones
incorporate
that you
them.
find there also. And of late, we've seen a scenario where there's capture, a political capture, a capture of the political space. They are the ones winning, positions into government. There's a certain gentleman who's there in the Senate now. The last time AMCON published the list,
His
he's
name
owing
was there.
160 billion naira. So we basically funded the man to get into the Senate, and that's it. It's totally wrong. And of course, after the president brought out the list of his ministers, the MD of AMCON came out again to say that, look, he's seen even some of the guys that owe them in that list.
Now,
And that's quite distressing for the people of this country.
okay,
It
Tope,
is totally unjust.
just hold on. We'll be taking the discussions, in sequence. You've raised a lot of issues, and let's take a look at the issue of AMCON itself. Now, 9 years on, since it was created in 2010, it's supposed to have a 10-year lifespan, which should expire next year. And it's not even up to 1 year again to supposedly the expiration of AMCON. Looking back 9 years on, was that a good decision to have created AMCON? Because I remember in 2010, we had that argument. A lot of people supported, a lot of people were against it. Now, 9 years on, with our lenses, would we say it was a good idea?
I don't think it was. I think those banks that were tottering at that point in time should have been allowed to fail. They should have been allowed to fail.
Like the ones that failed in 2005 and went.
Yes. Look, you see that the MD of AMCON is repeating something now, that he wished that we could have the 1995 Failed Bank Act to come back. I was in banking in 1995. I was there. I saw out a lot of those. In those days, the finance companies and so on, people used to have 120% deposit rates in a year and all of that. And of course, it was just steaming and lading. Guys were just, presenting a good front, taking people's money and walking away. And I think it's this lazy approach to life. Nobody wants to create something tangible in this country. Everybody wants to be like a banker, just go there, sit inside AC and make your billions and so on. But we need to get on the streets. But the point, I think the real issue now is that the politicians of the day are not serious with doing anything about this issue. As a matter of fact, more specifically, one expected President Buhari to be able to take a position on this issue, to be able to move against these people by saying that, look, it won't be under my watch that you come and cheat the people. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is the very opposite, where he, wittingly or unwittingly, I would say unwittingly, he just doesn't know.
That's what I wanted to ask right now.
He doesn't know what's going on.
Do you think that the federal government, because I said earlier that we'll be taking these issues one by one so that our viewers would even understand the thought process behind this. A certain senator right now, like you mentioned, is in the Senate right now, and his company is owing over. In fact, when I saw the figure, I said, Nancy, look well. My mathematics didn't fail me.
160
billion naira.
160.
There are a lot of them. A lot of them
heavily
really
implicated in the subsidy scam as well.
Saga, yes.
I was with someone, on a certain forum, someone who was in the Agimokwede committee said by the time he threatened them and said he was going to spill the beans and reveal some things and all of that, they backed out. You see, the process, I ran for president as well. People blame us and say, you don't have money, you are running for president. But check out those who get their money. And a lot of these people get compensated. So if you can put up money, whether you stole the money or not, and then you put the money up and someone uses it to become president or become senator or become whatever, in this country we will hail you and say, this guy is smart. But you see, we are actually taking ourselves down into the doldrums as a people. Let me say this also. It is not only that. This issue actually concerns me very personally because right now I'm in court. I'm in court because I decided to, not take AMCON to court, but to compel AMCON to investigate a certain issue because in the last list they published, the cooperatives of Shell, Mobil, and Chevron, their cooperatives, staff cooperatives, are owing 40 billion naira, which they refuse to service. So in the last list that AMCON published, they only published people who refused to engage. They said these are the recalcitrant debtors who have refused to engage with us. The total amount on that list was about 906 billion naira. Of course, that's where we saw, this other gentleman in the Senate, Ifan Yuba, specifically, owing 160. These are. In fact, it's right there on the internet. Yes, people like Jimo Ibrahim owing about 60 billion as well, and by Courtney 60 billion as well. And then, but the one that pisses me is, why would the cooperatives of Shell, Mobil, and Chevron be owing 40 billion to the people of Nigeria? For building, perhaps you went there, the cooperatives went and borrowed money to build different mansions and villas for themselves, for the staff. Number one, you're lucky if you have a job in Shell, Chevron, and Mobil. You're lucky as a Nigerian. It's great and gross injustice for you to then go and borrow money from the banks to build mansions or estates or whatever it is you're building and refuse to engage. And of course, what happens is that from time to time, the leadership of the cooperative will leave. Another set of people will come, and when they come, they say, well, we don't know about that loan. It is unfair to the people of Nigeria. So not only are we having scenarios where people who are supposed to be businessmen have gone into the banks to borrow money, and again, they also allege that the bankers maybe have compromised those loans by collecting part of the money, and for that reason, they are not going to pay. So it's not good enough for such a thing to happen. Again, the implication for the economies is number one.
No, we'll come to that.
Okay.
We'll come, as I said,
okay.
Let's just, I want us to be taking it, bit by bit. These toxic assets that really facing AMCON now, and I do know that, I think 105 debtors were published last year.
Yes.
Last year, 2018. I think 100 debtors in 2016, or what have you.
And they are there on the internet, actually.
Yes, for anyone to see. This financial rascality that we're seeing right now, that is now becoming something, the financial rascals are beginning to go into the political, into the political environment, perhaps to amass more power and more, and more perhaps romance with those in government, so that they don't get challenged for all of that. You made a point earlier, and I'll still want us to take a look at it. I don't want us to gloss over it, in the sense that these are, in fact, Ahmed Kuru, who is the MD of AMCON, did say that a lot of these politicians, a lot of these ministers, big people, or the big guys of organizations, both men and women, are owing AMCON and close to over 5 trillion naira. How should the government attend to this? Because this is a very huge issue. I don't want us to just talk about it and just go over it. You mentioned earlier that perhaps President Buhari doesn't know. But I also do know that, was it sometimes last year, or was it earlier this year, that the vice president said that the federal government will not do business with those owing AMCON. But I'm also surprised that we're also seeing them, and they are the ones romancing with also the federal government. So is it just, I think
it's a national issue.
I don't want us to gloss over it.
This is the liquidity of the entire country being sucked away. The MD of AMCON said that we now stand a very big risk of not being able to recover any of this 5 trillion at all. And that's because that 5 trillion is not really growing. I'm not sure they're charging extra interest on it. Probably have frozen it to say, okay, look, this is a bad loan. There's no point accumulating interest on it and all of that. I've read a number of the shenanigans, the fake collateral that a lot of people have.
Yes.
The unrealizable
pricing of the asset,
overpricing of
properties,
the kind of,
which is also a major issue.
Look, it's a national issue. That the government will do itself a disservice and do the people of this country a disservice by not engaging with it and solving this issue. So, of course, the AMCON MD did not say who and who have just been nominated as ministers who actually in their books. Though we can try to find out. I didn't bother going deep into that. Even the simple article I wrote asking Buhari whether this was him and all of that went viral. And all I did was just look at 2 or 3 or 4 people and say, look, what's going on here? If we actually dig it, I don't know why Nigerians aren't even inquisitive anymore. Beyond making noise on social media, we want, some investigative ability. You dig into stuff. Bring out facts that can't be denied, and I think that's where we need to begin to go in this country. It's totally unfortunate. It's a national issue. It's cheating.
What if facts are brought out and at the end, no, perhaps let me just dwell a bit on what you've just said. What if facts were brought up, but nothing has been done about it.
Well,
we
again, the
we
hands
know
on the government.
was it last year before the
Yes.
election, the video that went viral on a certain governor that was being bribed with dollars and all
Exactly.
of that, and nothing was
you're
done.
very correct.
Do you understand?
But
There,
you
so
know
there are a
what?
lot of scenarios like that. Or that you will say, you will see something koro on video, they will say, no, it's doctored or it's photoshopped or something.
You're very correct, but you see here, what we have to understand is that, government is a continuum. Life will continue. When all of these guys are gone, other people will come. Everybody is writing
but
their
there
own
are examples
record.
and antecedents that
No,
are set.
it's not forever. It won't last forever. These
We
things
have
are
to
being
take
etched.
charge of our forever.
This thing have been etched. This thing have been etched in history. That look, Yar'Adua came, and it was around the time of the global economic meltdown, crisis, financial crisis, and a few Nigerian banks, Oceanic and Co, they had overtraded. These guys were permanently at the CBN window borrowing money to survive, right? Because they had overtraded. Simple. I mean, recently I read an interview by one of the then MDs, and she was saying all sorts of things. The point was, you overtraded. Look, in finance, it is valid. What they call moral hazard. That sometimes when you have so much money at your disposal, you throw corporate governance away through the window, and you begin to trip. And you begin to believe your own press that you have arrived. That was what happened then. But Yar'Adua gave Sanusi the authority, and he traveled out of the country. He even traveled out of the country, even with his wife. Of course, the elites of this country never forgave Yar'Adua for that, But he did the right thing to say, okay, listen, if this is the scenario, let us take up these guys. Let us ensure we get the assets from them. Let us ensure that we track them. They can't continue to rule over the roost when they've done this bad. Of course, people will say, why is it this bank? Why not that bank? The point is, the thing is there. Who and who could not survive? Which banks had serious liquidity challenges and was always at the CBN window trying to borrow money at that point in time? So they moved against them. Look, even anywhere in the world, that's how it ought to be. That's how it has to be. You cannot, the way we treat the people of this country, remember, I mean, the same country, last 2 weeks or so, United Nations came out with this, that we have about, I think, 95 million Nigerians in what they call multidimensional poverty, meaning that the poverty of food, poverty of education, poverty of health, poverty, there are even some people, you may have a job and be able to feed, but if you can't afford health, see all these people we see in the news every time, begging people, please, I have kidney problem, please come and save me, Nigerians. You go to Lagos right now, as you're approaching the airport, you see people with tumors on the road. And look, every country has their own, they have people with tumors and cancers and kidney issues and so on. But you won't see people on the road like that, begging, because we ruined the health sector, and then the big men take themselves abroad. I mean, look at the educational system. We have our students in public university sleeping outside on bed-bug-infested mattresses, living like worse than animals. And of course, our big men take delight in showing off, telling us how their children are graduating. So I think they've actually, look, we've actually gone past that era that triggered the French Revolution, when Marie Antoinette would say that they said the people couldn't find bread. They said, why don't you give them cake? That's what these guys are saying to us. You know what I mean? A certain governor in the north recently took on a new Lebanese bride, to show that he has arrived. And so you can see where the priorities are. You know what I'm saying?
But that's his private business.
Well, we don't need that. I'm not sure we need that in the space. In the same Bauchi state, you probably will find 3 million children on the streets. Where is seriousness going to come from? We have to be serious about our issue. The world is watching this country and wondering if these people know what they're doing and whether we even need a country. God forbid that the way we're going will be stateless one day. By the time this thing reaches a nadir and everything blows up in our faces. So to a large extent, again, this is an injustice, a gross injustice on the people of this country. We're using taxpayers' money to fund those banks and keep them alive one way or another, even though there's this idea that all those banks are meant to be contributing a certain amount of money to defray some of it to the... But the bottom line is that, these guys are not engaging with the people of this country. They're not engaging with AMCON. A lot of them have told AMCON to go to hell. In fact, some of the smaller ones that you won't hear, someone is owing so much money, the bank is harassing him, "Oga, when are you going to pay?" The guy said, transfer the money to AMCON. because they believe that, AMCON is a sock away of all the bad debts, and once it goes in there, nothing is going to happen, And again, I've even seen scenarios where some of the so-called respected economists have said that government should begin to think of creating AMCON number 2, because, again, non-performing loans of the banks went as high as 11%. I think they said it reduced to 9% recently. Yes, 11% of their portfolio is bad. And they are saying, no, now this is getting unsustainable. Why don't we pack all of those loans again, create AMCON number 2, or extend the life of AMCON, pack the loans and give to them? I think that, it's just totally unfair. We're being unfair to ourselves and to our future as a people. I think that the government should really, really get involved and engaged with this issue. I think something drastic needs to be done. I think they should empower the AMCON people to be able to go after these people, publish all of their names, shame them, name them, let the Nigerian people know who and who has eaten them dead.